Welcome to episode 339 of the Stacey West podcast. My name is Gary. Joining me this evening is Chris. How are you, mate?
Oh, very well. Very well, thank you. Feels very strange to be recording on a Monday night, mainly because I'm normally at work on a Monday evening. It's just the way that my work schedule has fallen, and being so close to Christmas means that I am available on a Monday evening. I had a lovely weekend, guys. I had a nice relaxing weekend. Even had an early night on both Friday, Saturday and Sunday. I feel very refreshed. How are you?
Well, I had an early night last night, for definite. Yeah, so we've got to address a couple of things. So first of all, and this is something that came out of Saturday rather than the reason we're recording on Monday. No fewer than 5 people spoke to me through the course of Saturday, both at the game and deep into the evening, to say that I was a little Mardy on the last podcast. And yeah, I got called all sorts of different names. I was told that I was a moaner. I was told that it was a difficult listen at times. One person even had to turn it off because I was so arsey. So we're going to try and keep it upbeat about a 0-0 draw with one shot on target, nothing for the final 70 minutes of the game. So that's going to be fun. And we've also got to address why we're late. So my apologies, first of all, for 1 or 2 people who have messaged me. I'm not an alcoholic. I just say that deep down. I'm not an alcoholic. But yes, Saturday did turn into a late night, and it turned into Sunday, and I still wasn't particularly well yesterday. So I got an early night, and by early night I mean 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So got up and was back in bed by 7:30. So apparently a 46-year-old man shouldn't drink what I would imagine would be a full bottle of tequila rosé after 10 o'clock at night.
I don't know what to say other than it's quite funny now in hindsight, isn't it? And maybe not so much for you. But yeah, as my nan would say to me if it was me, "Oh, you'll never learn."
No, I will learn. I will learn. Yeah, I just forget lessons that I've learned. So those of you that are worried about my marathon efforts, please don't be. The plan is to knock alcohol in the head after a week on Saturday when it's our Stacey West night out, which will probably be much quieter than I imagined it would be last time out. So we are still having another night out. So do expect me after the next 12:30 kickoff not to put an article out, not to do the podcast, and to have some drinks in town. But after that, absolutely stressed. That's it. And on a positive note, for those again who are worried about the marathon, I didn't smoke any cigars again, which is now, it's a big thing for me, you Chris, isn't it? I mean, you know what I'm like. I get a sniff of alcohol and I'm on the cigars. So yeah, once again, I remain smoke free.
There you go. Yeah, that is commendable. And every cloud has a silver lining. Had a tough evening on Saturday, but no cigars. There you go. Step in the right direction, mate.
Yeah, that doesn't really wash it. Have I gone? Have you lost me already? Am I frozen?
No, you're still there, mate. You're all good.
Oh, okay. Right. So I suppose what we're going to have to do at some point is talk about football.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not as down on it as you are, to be honest. I'm really not. I'm not gonna be so bold as to say, "Oh, it was brilliant. It's the most exciting 0-0 draw I've ever seen." But it wasn't that bad, particularly in the first half. But I'll let you introduce it in the way that you were planning on doing.
All right. I don't. Looking back, it was a game that wasn't. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm not saying Lincoln were bad, because I don't think we were. It was just a game, but that was just ruined by the conditions. And
of course, yeah.
And that was from a fan point of view as well. We arrived there. It's raining. It's windy. There's people congregating under the stands. There's people in the fan zone. I mean, it was just a hard day from start to finish, and it was really tough to get any sort of atmosphere. There was empty seats right the way up to kick-off because nobody wanted to come out the bars. Nobody wanted to come out, from under the stands or anything like that. And whilst I thought, had the best of the first half, and by the way, Nathan Jones thinks his side had the best of the first half. I'm not sure how he sees that. And then he complained at the second half that the wind was right in their faces. Well, you picked to kick into the wind the first half. But anyway, yeah, it was just flat. It was just tough, I think. It was a tough game to be at.
Yeah, it was. I'm not going to disagree with anything you've mentioned there. I think the fact it's a 12:30 kickoff doesn't help because you get less build-up, I suppose. Even if the weather was nicer, I think we'd have certainly arrived maybe an hour before kickoff, whereas normally we're probably getting on for an hour and a half to 2 hours before kickoff for most 3 o'clock kickoffs. So that in itself would always limit that kind of build-up and that kind of adds to the atmosphere, adds to the kind of the ritual, I suppose, that's part of a match day experience for all of us. And then add the weather to that, where none of us were particularly keen in hanging around outside for very long. It was a case of park up, walk to the ground, trying to get as least wet as possible, straight into the ground, straight into your seat under cover, and then it's not far off kickoff, to be honest. So that whole kind of build up was kind of tainted a little bit. I think for us it was on the way in. Because normally we'll be checking the team probably in the fan zone with loads of other people that we're chatting to, and it was in the car on the way in that you read the team out to me, and it maybe just makes that moment just less significant, I suppose. Because for me, like, we've had the build up, the game's starting soon. Now it's kind of game face on a little bit when the team's out, and you can start to remember maybe whatever you're talking about up to that point. You kind of always talk about the game from that point as soon as the team comes out. And I think for us it just changed things, didn't it? But yeah, I think we're not going to beat around the bush. The 2 o'clock, the 12:30 kickoff in conjunction with the horrific weather certainly dampened things a lot in regard to atmosphere, build-up, and ultimately quality on the pitch. And I'm not blaming players for that. It was tough for both sides. When the ball is like that and the wind is swirling, it's very difficult to play football.
Honestly, normally we've got a big long list. So when we do a game, it'll be, right, we're going to talk about the first goal. We'll talk about this period of play. We'll talk about this incident. We'll talk about that. And we've normally got this list prepared. And I sat down last night, rather foolishly, to write up the game. And I started looking at the list of things to talk about. And we had one shot. And Joe, we're not talking here about us being particularly bad, because I thought in the first half, playing into the wind, I said to you at half time, I thought it actually helped us a little bit. Because the ball kind of hung up in the air, and it made headers potentially a little easier to judge when it holds up rather than it's overrunning. And I felt it was dropping in that phase just in front of our attacking third was allowing us to probably get the ball down a little bit more. And I think that's why we saw quite a bit in the first half of Rico getting on the ball, of Jack Moylan getting on the ball, and then being able to kind of run at their defence. I thought Rico had a really good kind of opening 35-40 minutes in particular. Very difficult in the second half for anybody in the attacking phase to get into the game, and I think the conditions worsened. And obviously Jack Moylan had our only effort at goal. By the way, it was in part helped on by Freddie Draper and Jovon Makama, 2 youth team products again. Did I say goal? I meant a shot. 2 youth team products again starting up top for us, and it was a moment of class in a game where the weather dictated that there weren't going to be very many moments of class.
Yes, absolutely right. And I agree with the weather, by the way, on the wind. I think, when you're younger, particularly as a goalkeeper as well, when you kick it into the wind, you think, oh my God, I can't wait to have the wind behind me, just because it feels safer. You can clear your lines and the ball's gone out the way. But for us, from like an attacking point of view, as we saw in the second half, if you clear your lines, the wind grabs it and the ball goes out of play. It's a goal kick. You start again. You set up for another kind of restart. Whereas in the first half, with the wind in our face, and I do think it got worse in the second half, it was probably stronger in the second half. But those kind of clips forward, if they dropped just over the back line, like the Charlton back line, the wind held them up so they didn't go out of play, and then that allowed us to kind of jump on. And we're good at that. We're good at jumping on second balls generally. We're good at jumping on second balls, high up the pitch, and then we play. We don't tend to play through even at our best, we don't tend to play through the thirds too often. We tend to get the ball forward quickly, get control high up the pitch, and then play on the deck. And that's when we're good. And we had a few phases of play where that looked kind of a bit like us, really. It looked like us playing in tough conditions, the best we could, but it was more like us. And I thought it was decent. Yeah, Moylan's shot was the only shot on target in the whole game. So it was decent effort. What's interesting, we looked at stats. I'm not going to go into too much stats about this game because not a lot happened, obviously. But Y-Scout, I don't think counts blocked shots at all because it said there's only 3 shots for us, whereas FOTMob has 10. I mean, that's a big difference, and it marks each of those shots as well, and when they were, where they were on the pitch, who they were by, etc. So yeah, there was still only 1 shot on target. We actually had 7, according to FOTMob, had 7 shots in the first half, which is more than I'd realised at the time. A couple of those went over were wild misses. A couple of them, I seem to remember one from Ethan Arahan went over the stand off a headed out corner. But we were definitely the better team in certainly the first half an hour. Created the most opportunities out of both teams, as much as I think Charlton threatened a couple of times, nothing really significant. I thought we dealt with the fact that we struggled to clear our lines at times pretty well because of the wind, and we got the ball down as well as we could. I came in at half-time thinking, considering the conditions, that was all right. If any team's going to win this, it's probably going to be us. But I'm not going to pretend that we created enough to justify winning the game in the first half because we didn't. But it was okay. And I think it's worth crediting where credit is due, that there were some decent individual performances in there. Rico, as you mentioned, I thought was back to his best, certainly in that first part of the game. Everything he did just seemed to be a lot more crisp and sharper and quicker. He was doing the same things he's been doing for the last 3 or 4 weeks, but maybe they just felt a little bit more considered, whereas it was almost automatic this time. And that was really good to see. To get kind of the best version of Rico Hackett back in the team was good. Jack Moylan is always threatening, even when it doesn't quite drop for him. And honestly, I thought the front two dealt with things really well. I thought Jovon had a really good game overall. He actually had more touches in the box than anyone else on the pitch, which I think is commendable. And Freddie won the most duels out of anyone on the pitch in the Lincoln City shirt, even more than Paulie O'Connor. He won 11 duels. So I think in tough conditions they battled well, but it's difficult to get kind of sustained possession there. So yeah, came in at half time, quite satisfied, to be honest, considering atmosphere, considering conditions, considering everything we've just mentioned. To be 0-0 at half time, not really be threatened at all. I felt okay.
Well, there's a couple of points to pick up on. First of all, Rico, I think we've got to mention that, because we mentioned Ethan Hamilton looking like he was back to his best against Exeter, and he's probably then not really had a bit of a run since then. But Rico is our first choice left wing back, and he's more likely to play than any other player in that position. And he's looked a little bit rough, I think, over the last couple of weeks, a little bit hesitant in places, a little bit rough around the edges. I thought he caressed the ball gently every time he was on it this time. I thought he treated it like, I don't know what, like, I can't even think. He just looked to glide at times. And I felt when Jack Moylan gets on the ball, something might happen, but it's either going to be good or bad. And I know that sounds stupid, but you know what I mean? He's either going to do something that makes you go, yes, Jack, or he's just going to run down a blind alley, or it's going to run away from him. There's no middle ground. He doesn't go on a run and then just pick out a little 10-yard pass to the edge of the area. Every time Rico got on the ball, it just felt different to me than it has done at all this season. He looked like he wanted to be there. He was moving the ball about, as I say, he was caressing it gently past defenders, through their legs, wiggling around. It didn't feel clumsy and it didn't feel forced. That's a real positive to take. The shank shots, there was obviously one from Ethan Arahan. We've probably strayed away from the one from Conor McGrandles that ended up going out for a throw-in and almost coming back to where he hit it.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
But that's the weather, isn't it? You're trying to judge the flight of a ball. 99 times out of 100 in training, you may not put them in, but you're going to hit them with a degree of accuracy, or you're going to find the sweet spot. Whereas in actual fact, with a little bit of wind, you've got absolutely no idea. So I wasn't taking any of the derision. And I think there was some, I thought while we looked all right playing against the wind, I thought they looked absolutely awful in the first half. I don't know how Nathan Jones can possibly say he felt they were the better side. I don't know how he can say they had any quality. The only person they had of any real quality was Alex Mitchell, who spent the entire game trying to wind up Ethan Arahan and Jovon Makama. But other than that, I thought that they looked one of the worst sides that we've seen this season.
Yeah, and I think, we've mentioned that for us, certainly in possession, that the conditions massively played a part. So you can only assume that has to have had an impact for them as well. But yeah, in terms of what we saw, they were poor. They were poor, particularly when you expect, again, we mentioned for us maybe when that it wasn't the case, but at the time in the first half, you expect when you've got the wind behind you, it's certainly away from home, you're less threatened, aren't you? Because you can clear the ball more clearly. And they just, they hardly had a kick, really. They had a little spell, sort of maybe a sort of 5 to 10 minute spell, maybe 30 to 40 minutes or so, where they had a little bit of possession, but really created very little from it. Nothing clear cut. There was one shot that was actually a decent opportunity where Campbell, who had a poor game overall, by the way, Campbell shanked into the stand. But that was kind of it. So yeah, they were poor. I'm baffled that Nathan Jones thinks that they had anything in the first half. We were by far the better team in the first half, without being quality, but we were by far the better team of the two. In the second half, it certainly evened itself out, I think. But yeah, first half we were the better side. I don't think you can really anyone can really argue with that, to be honest. Nothing more to say in terms of like passing accuracy, like number wise percentage. Ours was overall passing accuracy 62%, long pass accuracy 32%. Both of them are about 10 to 15% lower than normal. That's conditions, isn't it? And it was similar for Charlton, by the way. So I think I can massively forgive our in possession stuff because the conditions are horrible to play against. Out of possession, though, I thought our setup was really good, and that's something that, let's be honest, hasn't been quite at its highest level in recent weeks. We've conceded some soft goals. We've been caught on the counter attack more often than maybe I think I'd like us to, despite us actually being okay in most games. As we've both said for weeks, even though we haven't been picking up results, we've been playing okay. But we had maybe just taken our eye off the ball from being hard to beat. That's something to build on, isn't it? And a couple of things really jumped out to me when looking at analysing this, and probably not something that you noticed in person as much because of the frustration of not being able to string 3 or 4 passes together at times. But mentioned duels. Freddie Draper won more duels than any other Lincoln player on the pitch, second most in the whole game. Sean Rowan, this is incredible, by the way, from a defensive point of view, won 9 duels, only lost 3, 75% ground duel win, 75% aerial duels, won all of his tackles, 3 out of 3 successful dribbles as well. That's just a really solid performance from Sean Rowan. In terms of chances created, Jovon Makama created 2 chances for teammates. No one else on the pitch created more. And then in terms of interceptions, which really goes to show from a team perspective, our setup was good. O'Connor with 6, Irahan with 5, Rowan with 5. No one, and Charlton had more than 3 interceptions in the whole game. So I think that goes to show in terms of just setup, structure, solidity, we were back to ourselves there. And I like what Michael said in his post-match press conference, in that, a bit of frustration at not getting the points, but we didn't concede. We wanted to get a clean sheet today. We needed to stop conceding soft goals, and we did that. It wasn't a game where you're really going to play a huge amount of pretty football. Would have liked to see us play a bit more, and we all wanted that, of course. But the eye test and also the numbers suggest that just shape-wise, setup-wise, you've got to give credit where credit's due. Football doesn't only happen when you've got the ball; it happens when you haven't got it as well. And when Charlton did have the ball, we nullified them a lot, and I think that deserves a little bit of credit. We just need to start improving going forward. But I think conditions had a role to play in that.
Now, there's 2 things I want to pick up on. One's a positive, one's a negative. So let's start with a positive, okay? And it starts negatively. So you and I in the Ivy Club in Rugby afterwards almost got into an altercation, I would say, with a man.
Yes.
Who was adamant.
Verbal altercation, I'd like to point out.
At one point, his wife dragged him away because she thought it was going to go further, I think. She certainly...
I may have missed that.
Well, Dad was involved, wasn't he? So, I mean, it's... so obviously we had quite a strong verbal alteration with a man who laughed at me when I said that Jovon Makama would be worth, or could potentially be worth, £1 million. And I know at some point now somebody else is going to laugh at me in the comments, but you're talking a 20-year-old striker. He's quick, he's strong. He does have better games than people think he does. I thought he had a good game. There was one moment, and I put it in my write-up, where he's gone free and there's 3 defenders and nobody with him, and he's got to the byline and he's wrestled the defender away and come back up the line to bring others into play, and he's been criticised, 1 for running all the way to the byline and 2 for playing the ball backwards. And it's like, but we've kept possession and created an attack from it, and nothing else happened from there. So just so on Jovon, the positive is, again, he had a decent game, didn't he? And since all the criticism from the Wrexham game, he's now scored 2 goals and probably looked the liveliest striker on the field for either side on Saturday. And when you're thinking about the players that they brought on and the players that they've had, so your Matty Gordons and your Gassem Mahadmis and Daniel Carnews, that's a big positive for Jovon.
It is, yeah. I have to say, in terms of strikers on the pitch, I was quite impressed in his short cameo by Miles Leaburn, a rare good performance in a poor Charlton side. But yeah, on Jovon, I think he's been getting, we've backed him on here, and I don't think we're blindly backing a player here. But I think when someone is getting as much criticism as he has, in our opinion, unjust, it's at least fair to point out when things go well. Now, for me, when opinion is brought towards, I'm more than happy for everyone to have differing of opinions. I know you and I don't disagree on a huge amount, but when we do disagree, we respect each other's opinion, don't we? But also, those opinions are normally based upon some sort of evidence. It's an informed opinion, and then you maybe rank the things that are most important. So for Jovon, I think sometimes the criticism is just unfounded. People say he's not very good. Well, why he's not very good? Well, because he isn't. Well, that's not an argument then. I'm sorry, I can't respect that. If you give me a reason why, fine, I'm more than happy to accept that reason. And in this particular game, wasn't given the space to get a shot away, yet had more touches in the box than anyone else on the pitch, created more chances than anyone else on the pitch. And I think, you've got to credit where credit is due. He didn't score a goal. There wasn't many chances in the game. It was a pretty boring game overall. But his individual performance was one of the more positive ones on the pitch compared to one of the more negative ones. And it's worth pointing out that someone who's been getting unjust criticism, some justified criticism, by the way, but some unjust criticism as well. I think it's worth pointing out when things are going well. And I really hope this doesn't come across as just blindly backing somebody because we want to support them. But it does baffle me that you kind of don't want your own players to do well. It comes across that way. That does surprise me a little bit from some sections, but it's just making sure that everything is founded upon some sort of evidence. And on Saturday's evidence, he was all right. And I think we want to credit that.
So we've given credit where it's due. And I know that as a goalkeeper, you are going to want to have a say on this. I thought George Wickens looked incredibly shaky on Saturday. He didn't really have a shot to save. I don't think they had a shot on target. But was it just the conditions, or is there a lack of confidence there? Because there was 2 or 3 real mix-ups. Like, I thought, real mix-ups.
Yeah, obviously I am keepers union, so I want to back up goalkeepers when I can. But I also think it's worth being just honest. And I think the wind always has a role to play. It's the worst conditions of playing as a keeper, particularly coming off your line, because where you think the ball's going to land, it often doesn't. And then you're out of position. It looks maybe more messy than it should. So there's the one in the first half where a deep cross came in. It looked like he should come for it. Paulie ends up heading away. They have a little bit of a pop at each other. I actually thought the ball really got away from him there. That wasn't really his fault. Whereas a couple in the second half maybe did. So yeah, I agree. It looked a bit shaky. And also, I think it's worth putting out on George Wickens. I think there's absolute potential there. But we praised Lucas Jensen last season. He had some criticism from distribution points of view, but as pure goalkeeping, he was dominant in his box, and his best attribute was shot stopping, wasn't it? And his save percentage was really high, and his goals prevented was like plus 13 or something. So he'd kind of actively prevented the equivalent of 13 goals. So of all the XG added up of shots on target that he's faced compared to actual goals conceded, he was massively up. George Wickens currently is only in the 17th percentile out of League One goalkeepers for goals prevented. He's actually minus 2.65. So what that means is, despite having 0 errors directly leading to a goal, you'd expect, with the quality of chances that the opposition have had, that we would have conceded 3 goals fewer than we actually have. So I think that does go to show that, and his save percentage is only about 60%, which is only in the kind of bottom quarter of League One. So I actually think that the criticism on Saturday, or the things that he looked shaky at, is actually what he's normally all right at, which is claiming high balls. But I do think there has not questions to be asked. I don't want to be too critical, but I think it's also worth being balanced and fair. And I like to use numbers to back up opinion when it agrees with me. I think it's only fair to do it when it doesn't agree with maybe the positive. And in this example, it shows that, yeah, maybe has he been unlucky sometimes? Yes. Could he do better with some in terms of just the volume of shots that have gone in compared to that he saved? Yeah, I think you can only say that. So I think the wind is to blame on Saturday on the whole, but I think there is something to be said that maybe he's looking at a little bit less confident than he did at the start of the season overall. And I think it's something just to kind of point out.
I think just a word on those stats there. We say we've conceded 3 more goals than XG states that we should do, but there's been no direct errors from the goalkeeper. That's potentially also kind of defenders as well, isn't it? Because if you've got for an XG like 0.1 from outside the area and you concede from that, so it could only be a couple of goals. If that goes through a crowd of players and the keeper's unsighted, although that goes on the keeper's stats as XG that he's conceded that he shouldn't, it's not directly related to him because he may have seen it late.
It's only includes XG on target, so it's actually shots that have only hit the target that are included. So never directly goalkeeper, but because like it might have got through a load of bodies and it's gone in and he's seen it. Like so it doesn't take everything into account. It's not an exacting metric. However, we used it to credit Lucas Jensen last season because he was massively
it's granted
positive for it. So I think it's only fair to point out the fact that there's an underperformance here so far. You often see these things level out as the season progresses, but so far there's a little bit of an underperformance there. So, but a clean sheet helps, doesn't it? Clean sheet certainly helps. That's going to help boost those numbers a little bit. We did get the clean sheet that we all wanted. Haven't had one for a flipping long time. It certainly feels like so.
0-0 with Exeter.
There's positives there. Yeah, it feels like we've conceded quite a few goals since then, doesn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, and then I suppose 5-0 against Man City or 4-0 against
in the league.
Chesham. Anyway, so we're back to that in the league thing. We're back to the Bailey Cadamarteri and Ben House discussion now. Anyway, so we try and be balanced. We try and put positive spins on things where there is negativity. We try and put a little bit of negativity inside positivity. But the big question to ask Chris Lamming now is, have you got anything else to say on the second half?
No.
I don't remember it. And when I looked on to Wyscout, like one shot each. And I actually felt like the first half dragged. I remember going down to get my drink at like 40 minutes because I always figure I don't want to miss half time, do I? I don't want to miss standing up in the cold and talking to people. So no, I do it to beat the queues. And I remember kind of thinking, wow, that seems to have gone on for ages. And I got up for the second half. And like it's just the game ended, and I'm like, I don't really know what's happened there. And it wasn't even like there was loads of like negativity because normally, and like the guys who were, when I say the people around me, the guys like directly behind me and stuff like that are normally pretty good. You get decent balanced debate, but you can hear, can't you? Like 3 seats forward, 4 seats back, or whatever. You can sometimes hear. So there wasn't even that much moaning. I mean, there was the guy who sits just in front of me, and I don't know if he listens. His mate, I think, listens sometimes because he sniggers a little bit when we go in Gwyn's, who was kind of angry at everything, as he always is. And by the way, the guy in front of us came in shorts on Saturday. I mean, come on, honestly. We said it in the car as well, didn't we? Somebody
you
come in
did,
shorts.
You did mention it, yeah.
Heavy shorts. So fair play to him for that. Obviously, he's got leather legs. So there was a few moans and groans, but I don't know. It just felt like it was just horrible. I mean, the word attritional gets used. I'm not even sure it was that in the second half because it wasn't like a war or a battle. It was just a slog. It must have been a slog playing because it was a slog watching.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. First, I actually thought was quite interesting. As much as it wasn't a huge amount of quality on show, as mentioned, we thought we were better. There was always something going on in the first half. It seemed to go on for ages, and then the second half. Well, I think the first subs were made around 70-ish minutes, and I couldn't believe that 70 minutes ago. I thought there'd been about 10 minutes in the game, and there'd been more than double that. And then from there, it kind of just flew by. Now, again, I think Charlton had 1 or 2 half chances. We had 1 or 2 half chances. I actually think we had the ball in the box quite a bit. Charlton defended the box quite well, and because of that, there wasn't really any shots, despite maybe us shading territory at times. But yeah, I really didn't think that we were gonna get anything from it, to be honest. And then it got to full time, and I just thought pure acceptance. A few things. Number 1, weather ruined it. Number 2, another lunchtime kickoff and another 0-0. That's 3 out of 3 this season now, isn't it? So I think there's got to be a stat there somewhere across the board, not just for Lincoln, just generally that those games are generally less entertaining, maybe in terms of score. But yeah, I was. Well, to be honest, after the game, normally I feel quite reflective. All I wanted to do was get in the warm and the dry. And it was only when I got back into rugby, to be honest, when we were chatting in the pub, I actually felt quite satisfied. At the time, I just thought, nah, that was a game that happened. We'll take the point and move on. But actually, upon reflection, I was more satisfied than I was disappointed. I suppose the only disappointment was the fact that after a decent first half, we didn't kick on. We kind of regressed a little bit from that point. Of course, conditions again, but we'll take the point, we'll move on. And we've spoken about this for half an hour, and I don't think it'll be spoken about for more than 30 seconds again, will it, at any point in anyone's memory?
It will be referenced in the future when I go Charlton at home, another crap 0-0, because I think under Mark Kennedy a couple of years ago it was 0-0, and it was one of the worst games I remember watching until we drew 0-0 with Cambridge not long after it. But it's funny you pick up on that. Sky Television 0-0 draws 3. Obviously we've got Reading a week on Saturday, which will make it 4, and then we have another midday kickoff. Smooth as a baby's bum. FA Cup third round midday, Birmingham City. So we wanted to talk about this briefly. I've put an article out about it today. I've had a really measured think about this, and I was challenged by a guy called Martin Green, who he baits me on social media, and when I get a chance, I bait him. And currently, I'm winning because I baited him the worst last, and he bit quite hard and realised he had. And his reply after he realised he had bit hard was, "I look forward to putting a positive spin on the Birmingham FA Cup move." Well, Kate says the time hasn't been moved because it was never actually announced as 3 o'clock. So the kickoff time for the Birmingham game. And I took that as a challenge. I gave it a little bit of thought today, obviously not over the weekend. I wasn't thinking at all at that time. And I've decided I'm really angry about it. And I'm really angry about it because it's for international viewers only that it's been moved. And for me, that strikes at the very heart of the problems in the game at the moment, because the Premier League, a lot of that is for international. It gets shown around. There's the money there in England, but it's a global product now. And as much as that pains me, I don't actually really care deeply about it because the Premier League is not interesting to me at all. Dave,
it's separate, isn't it? It's like a different entity
game
altogether. Yeah.
Not interested in it. And I've always said I would actually hate us being in the Premier League because I don't want stupid kickoff times. So for the FA Cup, a British or a United Kingdom institution, because obviously there's clubs from Wales in it, so a UK institution, an English institution. 1872, the first game played. It belongs to the people of England and Great Britain, and it belongs to the supporters, and as it should. If the game's moved for Chesham, and we go and watch it, and people can't watch it at home, but the money goes to Chesham and it helps them build a new clubhouse, or it helps this and that. That's brilliant. If it's moved for telly and we're in the National League and it's Ipswich or Oldham, and after the Oldham game, there was 7,000 people at that game, but it opened the eyes to people in Lincoln. And since then, our average attendance, I don't think, has ever dropped to the level that it was that night in Oldham, because people have then just started coming, and it helped reinvigorate the club. And a lot of other things played into that. So that's good movement for television. But for supporters in England, one, not to be able to watch the game anyway. So it's been moved for TV. You and I won't be able to watch it. It's going to be broadcast overseas. I don't know where overseas. I assume America. I may be wrong. The only other games I think that were picked were all championship ties. I think. I'd say America. I don't want to be disparaging to Americans. It's a big country. It's not, there are good people and bad people everywhere. This isn't about Americans generally. It's about where the market has been moved to. I just think it's disgusting. And I have spoken to the club, and I am told that there's a £30,000 bonus for us. So 30 grand goes into the club coffers, which would cover what Rob Street's transfer. So, and Football Fortune is all about, the budget relies on Football Fortune. But I mean, I don't want to moan because I got criticised for moaning quite a lot on the podcast last week. But it just feels to me a little bit wrong that this is the reason it's being moved for. Am I being unreasonable? Am I saying
no,
this TV money's all right, but this TV money isn't?
No, I think it's context, isn't it? And I think opinion should always be backed up by context and by facts. And there's always going to be an element of opinion and bias there, but to be honest, man, I don't think I've got a lot to add because I agree with everything you've said. For me, I think we know the benefit that Football Fortune and TV money can have. We wouldn't be where we are now without it, I don't think, after what happened for us on our FA Cup run. So we know the benefit of that. And that was moved for the British public to be able to watch because they thought it was going to get viewers because it was an exciting match to watch. It was an exciting fixture. So I think the first one that was on TV was the Ipswich replay. Am I wrong?
Yeah, because it was Altrincham before that, wasn't it?
And then Oldham, and then Ipswich, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
no,
and then we had
telly, wasn't it? Oldham was on tally because the Ipswich game was drawn out after it, and it was an evening game. It was moved to the Monday night.
I'm not sure. I wasn't there. I was bloody working. How annoying that was. Anyway, so ultimately, the point stands in that there was TV coverage of those matches, and it helped us out massively. And we don't want to be hypocritical in kind of then just saying, particularly like for the Chesham game, if I think all of us as Lincoln fans were more than happy for that to be moved. On the whole, wasn't ideal. Actually, it was ideal for us in terms of our trip away. But for general Lincoln City supporters, it wasn't ideal being moved from Saturday to Monday night. Meant that few of us could probably go. But we all understood that the benefits outweighed the kind of the negatives there, particularly for Chesham, and they deserved their day in the sun just like we deserved ours when we had it. And also, everyone was still able to watch that because it was on British TV. So anyone that wasn't there was able to watch it. The difference with this is this isn't been moved for British TV. And because even though there's a 3 o'clock blackout, which I think most of us back the blackout overall, for all the reasons that have been mentioned before, the matches that are then not at 3 o'clock are generally able to be watched by some means legally. And in this example, it's been moved with the inconvenience of match-going supporters, yet supporters who are now no longer able to go to the game due to the kickoff time, or that would have been able to watch online, would have maybe been able to watch online before, aren't able to. And it's solely for people that are not directly involved or impacted by this. And I think that's the element. The fact it's solely for overseas viewers. If it's moved for British TV and overseas TV and everyone gets to watch it, I've got no issue with it, really, on the whole. As much as I don't like it, I understand it. I think the key is it's the fact it's only for overseas viewers at the detriment of the people that are going to be going to the game. And I think there's a line that's been crossed there, and I don't like it. And I don't give a shit about the 30 grand, to be honest with you. As much as I know football fortune is important, budgets are really important, I think there has to be a line somewhere. And I think we've gone past it. And it's not always, obviously, it's not the club. Nope. Don't get to decide this. But for me, the line's been crossed.
I think the line must have been crossed because, ladies and gentlemen, on episode 339 of the Stacey West podcast, I think that's the first time Chris Lamming has sworn.
Might be. Yeah,
it might be. Wow. So, yeah, hopefully people aren't turning off again going, I can't listen to that because they're both moaning an awful lot. So we'll go from that. We'll go from football falling apart. We are going to go to a break in a minute, but I think it's pertinent to then highlight some positive news, and it's news that you've seen and tweeted about. So I will hand over to you to highlight what you think is a real positive piece of news before the break.
Yeah, so the ticket situation has been announced today for the match away at Bolton between Christmas and New Year. And there was quite a lot of criticism of Bolton Wanderers last season with their ticket pricing, charging over £30+ for an away ticket, and also placing us up in the top corner out the way, miles away from the action. Credit where credit is due. Bolton are charging adults £10 for this match, and I believe the away section is now on the first tier as well, so you're closer to the action as well. So credit.
So I won't be going like that in the stands.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, credit where credit is due. This is really, really good, particularly when everyone's most likely spent quite a lot of money at this time of the year. I think it's a really aware decision, and we've just criticised the powers that be for various decisions that have been made. It's only right to praise where praise is justified. I think particularly after we criticised Bolton Wanderers last season as well, I think this is worth pointing out. And we've been given a 1,600 capacity allocation away end, which is good. I think that's more than enough for us on the 20. I think it's 29th of December, whatever that day is, anyway, that weekend. But it's just good. It's just good, isn't it? To only charge £10, that'll entice more people to go, which is a win for everyone. But I just think it just shows real awareness, and that's good.
I just hope it's not like the last time we went there in the winter, or the last time I remember when there was snow on the M62 and we lost 4-0 in the FA Cup. And we'd got through 2 rounds of the FA Cup with our own players, and Chris Sutton loaned a load of players and gave them their debuts. Michael Uwezu being one of them, who later went to Forest Green and I think then played for the Metropolitan Police. So he was on a downward trajectory. Anyway, we're going to go to a break now. We're not going to, if you're watching on YouTube, or for some reason, I don't quite know how or why I've done it, but I'm also broadcasting on Facebook, apparently. So I've pressed the wrong button somewhere. So we'll go to that break. If you're listening at home, and if not, you'll just get us two chatting. And I hope to God, after what we've just been talking about, that the break isn't an advert for Sky TV. And I know they're not. We'll be back in a minute. Thank you. Right, let me just make a note of the time.
39:20 something.
Yeah, we've got through Charlton then. Should we have a look at some comments so that it's special for the people who are watching? at home. So I'll go all the way to the top. We might even take a bonus question. So Steve Race, hello, gents. Steve, how you doing? Charlie Chem, which is much, much easier than trying to pronounce Charlie's second name. Hello, gents. Hi, Charlie. Got a nice email from Charlie the other day. Yeah, it's going through a little bit of a tough time in a minute, bless her. Adam Bull,
I wasn't laughing at you, Charlie. Sorry, I was laughing at the next comment. I'm so sorry.
Was shocking timing.
It was. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Tequila Rose is a bit different, though, isn't it? It's basically like, it tastes a little bit like you'd imagine gone off milkshake to taste.
I prefer real tequila, like I had in Germany.
Yes. Did you? Yeah. Well, same. I would say same outcome, but I wasn't sick or anything like that. Just a class. Sue. So welcome along, Sue. Thank you. Wet, windy, miserable day. Early kickoff. We love a 0-0. Richard Godson says I have an impressive constitution. If you like my constitution, you should see my. No, wait a minute. Kyle Fox. Evening, guys. Adam Bull. That's right. With a 12 o'clock kickoff, limited time for tequila shots. Well, you make time, don't you? You just stay up. Can you believe, honestly? And I know I got turned away from Pop World twice.
Twice?
So I went to Pop World, or we went to Pop World, tried to get in, was turned away, and then thought that, do you know what will work here? Going somewhere else for an hour or two, drinking loads of shots, then we can go back. Yeah, didn't work either. Sue Imp had the magic moment before the game, and that was not dampened by the weather. Even got a card from the team. That's brilliant. Richard thinks so as well. That's terrific. I'm assuming that's down by the pitch side, which is really good. It's great that the club do that. Richard Godson thought Ethan Aran and Rico Hackett had words at one stage. And Steve said, I think it might be that other players don't see the opportunities to move in space that Ethan sees, and that's why it breaks down. The Danny Mandroyu effect, because I think that happened with Danny last season. Sue said, obviously, that do fans not see that teams put 2 or 3 in Jovon every game? They do, often double up on him. How tall do we think Jovon is? 6'3", 6'4"?
Yeah, 6'3".
Yeah. George hasn't had the strongest defence in front of him that Luke's had last season. That's actually a really good point from Sue.
Yeah, he hasn't had the consistent defence.
The settled defence.
Yeah.
They're good players, but it's been different right-sided centre-backs, and that just means balls into the box might not be dealt with as incisively. And I want to hurry through some of these comments, so my apologies if I do. Jason Wright says George is learning on the job. We have to expect peaks and troughs. Harry agrees with Sue. If Makama is supposedly so crap, why do teams attempt to mark him out of the games? Is a threat, and our opposition have recognised this. Richard Godson says, hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube, everyone. There we go. We got 3 likes so far and 42 people watching on YouTube. Oh, I've managed to broadcast on my personal Facebook as well as the Stacey West, so that's clever. So 5 people watching on my personal Facebook, 2 on the Stacey West, 42 on YouTube. Are you ready to go back into it?
Absolutely.
So that's 42, let's say 45. Hello and welcome back to episode 339 of the Stacey West podcast, where hopefully you haven't just had an advert promoting the virtues of televised football, because if it is, it will make us look like mega hypocrites rather than just little miniature hypocrites. We do have some more things to talk about now. Predominantly, we're going to look ahead to the Virtue Trophy, or as it's being called by some people, the Virtue Signalling Trophy, or the Virtually Nobody's Watching Trophy. That's happening tomorrow night, or probably tonight if you're listening on Tuesday, or it happened yesterday if you're listening on Wednesday, and you can skip this bit. But we are away at Morecambe. It's our inevitable away trip after the group stages, because we always seem to finish second. We always seem to go away. We normally always go to Accrington. But how exciting for the second year in a row, we've got a cup tie against Morecambe. Now, these are really hard to preview, aren't they? Because we know they're an average side. They're not doing particularly well in the league. Derek Adams is a decent manager. He's trying to make them strong. He's trying to make them quite robust. It isn't really working. Grimsby put 3 past them at the weekend, which kind of raises the bar for us a little bit. We've had a look at team selection. For the first 2 games, they tended to play a relatively strong team with 3 or 4 changes. For their final group stage game, when they were already qualified, they played a much weakened side. I mean, we said we're going to do a Morecambe preview. It's really tough to preview, to be fair, isn't it?
It is, in terms of previewing what we expect to see happen on the pitch, because the thing is, it's hard enough to predict what's going to happen with the opposition, because, as you mentioned, most teams tend to make changes in this competition. Some teams tend to take it more seriously than others, make more changes than others. But it's even difficult to sometimes predict like systems and tactical side of things, because they change shape, or teams often change shape in this competition. We've done that to kind of accommodate the players that we're going to be playing. So it's almost impossible to predict what sort of team and how strong a team and what sort of shape Morecambe are going to be putting out. So I suppose the only thing we can talk about is ourselves, isn't it? And how we may approach this as Lincoln City. Again, I don't think it's a surprise for anyone to learn. I think we mentioned this. You and I think, agree on this. Is generally quite like this competition. I like the fact we've got another game in it because it means that we have the likes of Oisin Gallagher, for example, who's likely to get some minutes. There's going to be a lot of fringe players who haven't had regular minutes are going to get opportunity to impress. And it also means that they're going to get minutes in their legs as well to keep kind of fitness and sharpness going. I think the pros are there as a justifiable competition to be part of and take relatively seriously with that context in mind. But we haven't got any defenders, or we haven't got depth in defence. So that's probably something that I think that obviously trumps this, because the last thing you want to do is lose an important player through injury from participating in this competition, particularly as we prioritise a back three generally in most of our league games. And we have got 3 fit regular central defenders, plus Tendai, who was fitted in there when required, but is, of course, also our starting right wing back. So we only really have 3 solid fit centre backs, and we tend to start with a back 3. If any of those 3 were to pick up an injury to keep them out a couple of games, not only do we then have to put square pegs in round holes, we've also likely got to change system shape, and that changes so much in the league. So I care less about this game than I would have done if we didn't have the defensive injuries. Honestly, all I hope is that we get good experience into young players and we come out unscathed.
First of all, very sorry to anyone that can hear the gentle snoring of a Shih Tzu in the background. But he came in a little bit earlier. I had to fuss him. He looked for attention, and now he's gone to sleep and he's snoring really loudly. So that's great. If we're going to preview, we're looking at Jamie Partington in goal. I think we're looking at Tendai and Oisin Gallagher in the centre of defence, as we did against Manchester City, with Dom Jeffries at right wing back and Dylan Duffy, or right back rather, and Dylan Duffy potentially at left back. There'll be then 2 holding midfielders. I would expect that to be Ethan Arahan and or Conor McGrandles rotated, potentially with Ethan Hamilton playing in that role, and then probably a 3 across the front, but that could be anything. I wouldn't be surprised if Ben House doesn't start, because he didn't play on Saturday. So if he's over his illness, it wouldn't surprise me if he starts. Bailey Cadamartri almost certainly will do. JJ McKiernan, I noticed, wasn't on the bench. So potentially if he's injured, he wouldn't, but otherwise he probably would. I think last time we had Rob Street on one flank as well. So you could see something like Street, McKiernan and House with Cadamartri ahead of him. And then as Suim says, will we see Tyler for 15 minutes? I actually wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Tyler for the 15 minutes towards the end of the game. But I think, in terms of a preview, that's more or less what it looks like. Would you think?
Yeah, I don't know about Ben House. I think if he's struggling with illness, even if he's fit now, I just don't see why you'd play him in this game when we've got plenty of options up top. I think Rob Street and Bailey Cadamartri will almost certainly start. When we played against Man City under 21s, we were 4-2-3-1 out of position with Fred playing in the 10 role, then joining in attack. Wouldn't be surprised to see that happen again. As much as he started on Saturday, he hasn't had a huge amount of regular football, so I wouldn't be surprised to see something similar in there. It's difficult to predict, isn't it? Really difficult to predict. Zayn Okoro, of course, has made a really, really big appearance last time, but of course the under-18s have got a big old game on Wednesday. So you imagine some of the younger players that maybe would have had minutes in this competition will probably be saved for a big opportunity in this one. Steve Barton just put in the chat, what about Saxon Early? It's like the forgotten man, isn't he? Yes, so he may get an option, though he was injured a couple of weeks ago. Scoobs mentioned that he hadn't been involved in the previous one because he was injured, but we have no idea what's going on with him, do we? Oh, suspended, of course. Sorry.
Against Man City. So my wonder is actually, do you play Saxon Early at left back and then Dylan Duffy could play on the
probably
left?
So.
3.
Yeah, most likely that.
Rob Street and then JJ McKiernan with Bailey Cadamartri ahead.
Yeah, that makes sense. Certainly makes sense. I think Ethan Hamilton probably will start after not starting the last game. Yeah, we don't know though, do we? We don't know. But I think there's a big difference here in regards to some of the even younger players who got minutes against Man City. Of course, Zayn Okoro being the one that kind of burst onto the scene. Really got his debut against Chesham, scored a goal, but then went down as an own goal. Bless him, and then scored a really, really good goal against Man City to back up a really good performance overall. But I don't think we'll see many of those sort of under 18 players in the squad for this one because of Wednesday.
Do you remember the last time we won at Morecambe?
Did we draw when we went for your stag do?
No, we got beat 3-2.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course.
A lot of that game passed us by, but yeah, we got beat 3-2 that day.
The answer to your question then is no.
Bruno Andrade double, February 23rd, 2019. I wasn't there. I was putting shelves up in the bedroom. You know, the shelves that you said you thought were wallpaper, and then realised that they were actually full of books. Yeah, I was putting those shelves up there.
Never seen so many books in my life. I was so impressed by that.
And it was the day that Dad went and ordered himself. My corner of my thing now changed. My dad went and ordered himself his dinner in Wetherspoons, but didn't change it from Lincoln Wetherspoons. So we basically ordered breakfast or beers or something like that to Lincoln Wetherspoons when he was in Morecambe. And failing that, actually, that was the only win that we have had at Morecambe since the 2010-11 when we were relegated. And in that game, Moses Swabu scored for us.
Bloody hell, that was a while ago. Just probably quickly on the Morecambe game, I suppose. So Michael has released his press conference. He basically said everything that we've just said in that there'll be a lot of rotation. We want to win. He has to say that. Of course, we want to win. He'll put a team out he thinks is capable of winning, but he's not going to risk anyone that we can't afford to lose. He mentioned that Oshin is in contention. MJ Kamara, who's he's out injured still, so he won't be part of it. I was going to try and attempt to watch the Morecambe presser as well. The assistant Danny Granger shared some words, but it's behind a paywall on Morecambe's website, and I wasn't prepared to pay a monthly subscription to Morecambe's website to watch that, so I don't know what he said.
Let me send you a link.
Oh.
Might help, might not. Just on Saxon early, there's actually a news piece has come out at 2:00. It's not actually today. 9th of December. Sorry, that is today. Wayne Rooney has declared that Plymouth Argyle are monitoring really closely the situation of Saxon early at League One club Lincoln City. He said that's something we're well aware of. He had an injury early on. It's something we're monitoring really closely. He's not playing, so we have to see what options we have. If he's not playing, it being a recall is something which we'd look at. Of course it is. And then whether we try and get him back out on loan to get more game time. And that ties in, I think Sue said that she's heard that he has already gone, which he wouldn't because he couldn't be recalled. But we don't know the situation. I mean, he could well have gone back in his training there, but it's not really known. We'll see. We'll find out tomorrow night, won't we? Because if he doesn't play at all tomorrow, I think it'd be interesting. I actually thought it was interesting on Saturday, if he is fit, that we named Tyler Walker on the bench when Tyler was really probably not going to get a run out at all. But to name a player
good point. Bench, good point. Yeah, JJ's absence on Saturday hasn't been addressed at all by the club or Michael himself. No. So we're assuming he's injured because we expect he would have been on the bench rather than us having 3 centre forwards on the bench as we did on Saturday, but we don't know. But yeah, I think just my opinion on the Saxon early situation is he's probably a victim of circumstance, really. He's probably been a bit unfortunate. At the point he was brought in, we didn't know what the situation was with Dylan Duffy's betting situation. Rico Hackett was still out injured and we didn't know exactly how long he would be in terms of being out for. So, and Eric Ring was... Yeah, we knew he was going to be coming in and adapting to English football, is capable of playing on both sides as well. We, at the time, didn't have a direct replacement as a wing-back on the right-hand side. We didn't know at the time that Dom Jeffries was going to be as comfortable playing at wing-back as he has turned out to be. So I think Saxon was brought in as an option. With all those question marks, it was better to have the option there and not use it than not have the option and need it. But we haven't needed him. Actually, we're pretty well stocked at wing-back now. So he's been really unfortunate. Has surprised me that he hasn't featured at centre-back instead of Sean Rowan at times when we played a back three in some of these competitions. But, it's difficult to find someone who's competent as a left-footed centre-back. They're very, very rare things, and he is primarily a wing-back. So, yeah, I fully expect him to go back in January if he hasn't gone back already. But we'll see. If he appears tomorrow, then maybe that will be revisited.
Now, we've had a couple of questions, and I'm only really going to pick up on, I'm going to generalize by kind of asking a rather all-encompassing single question that inevitably will draw a 10-minute answer from Chris before we finish. So we've had questions really about the current form. So would a change of formation to 4-4-2 help the current form? Is the current form down to bad luck? Is it down to bad planning? They're all around the current form. So let's make no bones about it. We've picked up 3 points from the last 15
6 games
now.
Six games.
6 games. So it's 3 points from the last potentially 18, which is a bad run. There's no dressing that up. We're not on a good run. I don't think we've played badly in any of those games. I don't think that we have had a game where I've gone, we deserve to lose that. We deserved to beat Wrexham. We didn't. We deserved a point potentially against last one we played last week.
Rotherham.
Lost. Rotherham, thank you. All these games merge into one. We probably, you could have said perhaps we did deserve to lose against Wycombe. They were a decent side. Should perhaps have beaten Exeter, should perhaps beaten Bristol City. And the Charlton game was a roll of the dice because of the weather. But there's only so far where you can kind of say, well, that's because of this, that's because of that. There's only so many times you can make those kind of, not excuses, but come up with reasons before you go, well, is the reason actually that we're not able to win football games? Because that's a real fundamental of being successful. So is it something people should be worried about? Is the current form something that should have people scratching their head and going, we're not really sure where we're going here?
Yeah, I've got 10 minutes. No, I'm joking. I'm not going to do 10 minutes. But I've definitely got an in-depth answer to this because I think there's multiple parts to it. Firstly, I agree with you. Football is a results business. And to pick up 3 points from a possible 18 isn't very many points. And if you continue that over the season, that's a bad thing. So we can't deny that that's the case. That is fact. However, it's a small sample size of 6 matches. As much as we wanted to get more points in this little 6-match block, you can't read into everything out of that, just those 6 games. And the way I try to approach this is, if I was a neutral analysing this, so imagine we're on this podcast and we're analysing an opposition team who's on the run that we're currently on. How would we judge them? You'd look at the results and you go, okay, let's look into these in a bit more depth and see what's going on. And honestly, I'd look at all the things I'd look at if I was analysing a team neutrally, which is every goal that's scored and conceded, and all of the data that I always look at as well, to try and get as clear a picture as possible without actually being at every single match. And I would say, if they keep playing as they are on the whole, all of these data points will even themselves out eventually. They're not doing a huge amount wrong. It's very likely that results will improve if performance levels continue at the level they are at. Now, as a Lincoln City supporter, when you watch every kick of every game with emotional investment, it's very, very difficult to see that bigger picture in that regard. And, we all feel it. So sometimes it's useful to try and take a step back. So my opinion on that is that there's not a lot wrong, actually. There's some things we need to improve upon. And to be honest, the numbers that I'm going to share really quickly back up what everyone is seeing anyway. So there's nothing here that says you're all wrong, because it probably aligns with everything that everyone thinks. But in the last 6 games overall, possession has been around 50%. So we've actually massively improved our possession in games. In terms of the amount of passes that are accurate in our half compared to theirs, it's been about the same. In terms of touches in the opposition box, though, we've had about 8 more touches in the opposition box than our opponents on average in this run. We've had 3 more shots than our opponents overall on average in this little run. So all those things suggest that we've been certainly no worse than our opponents, and marginally better in some cases. But we've only had the same number of shots on target. So we're actually getting the ball into good areas really well. On average, better than our opponents, albeit marginally. But we're not making those chances count. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone, is it? Ultimately, but these are the metrics that gauge overall performance levels. And we've said for weeks, Michael's referenced it in his press conferences, a lot of it's good. We need to be better in both boxes. You start in your own box, you make sure you stop conceding silly goals and soft goals, and then you build from there. We did that on Saturday. That's good. Hopefully we can continue that now in the next 2 or 3 matches. And then, to be honest, if we're keeping them out, even if we're scoring at the rate we're scoring at the moment, if we're keeping out the shots we should be keeping out, we'll we'll win some of the games that we're drawing, and we'll draw some of the games that we're losing, and we'll be all right.
So
I don't think there's a
basically,
lot
you're
wrong.
saying that you're saying people shouldn't be worried as long as we stop conceding goals and start scoring them.
Yes, I suppose so. But what I mean is the overall performances, because if you want to be process orientated, don't you, rather than outcome driven? Outcomes are a result of the process, and the process is all right. The process is right. We're better or on par than our opponents on almost every metric that is not goals. I appreciate that's the most important one, but it's the processes that lead to goals. A goal doesn't appear out of nowhere, does it? You only score a goal off the back of a pass, across a period of play, and that is all measured. So for me, my opinion is very much, let's try and take a step back if we can. If we keep doing what we're doing on the pitch, on the whole, we're actually probably going to, even if nothing changes in terms of overall performances, we're probably going to start picking up more points. We've stopped conceding silly goals in one game. Let's continue that. After that, we'll be okay.
I mean, I agree with you. I'm just being an arse.
I know you do. I know.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
I know.
I agree.
Exactly
We are. I mean, I always have that thing that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. But actually, in this instance, it isn't, because we are doing the same things. We shouldn't expect the different outcome. We need to work on the different outcome. But if you're getting into positions to miss chances, Saturday was different. Saturday was the outlier for me. But Rotherham, we were the better side. Wrexham, we should have got at least a draw. We've had games in the past where I think things are not looking bad, and like we were saying last year when it was Mark Kennedy, look, we've got a good, well, not last year under Kennedy, maybe, we've got a good solid base. We're not conceding goals. We just now need to start creating. Well, we are creating. We're creating opportunities. We're putting them out for a throw in, or we're putting them on the cathedral spire, or well, they haven't got spires on the cathedral. We're not putting them back in time, but you know what I mean. We're creating, but we've got to be more clinical. And actually, the January transfers window is going to come round, and everybody's going to be saying we need a striker. We don't. We just need our strikers to start stepping up a little bit more. One or two of them, and getting in these, decent positions.
At least just finishing off what we're creating. And there has been legitimate criticism of not taking our chances in some games, and I can only agree with that. Start doing that a bit better, then we're going to be okay. I think we've already been relatively solid at the back on the whole. I think Saturday goes to show in a game where you're likely to create havoc, in boxes, is likely to be mistakes. Don't think we really made much of a mistake in the 18-yard box defending, and that's a positive, because that's kind of what we expect from Lincoln City as a minimum, isn't it? Being really hard to beat, and we hadn't been that hard to beat in the previous games. For me, as much as the not taking chances have been frustrating, it was the conceding the softer ones when we were on top in games that was the most frustrating. Because if you're not conceding those, you're in the game, aren't you? When you're conceding it, because you're not taking your chances, you've got to score two then, and that's difficult.
So we do have one little bit more business, but basically the Stacey West podcast episode 339 has been as follows. A 0-0 draw with one shot on target was terrible. FA Cup games being moved for international overseas is terrible. £10 tickets are good. We can't really preview Morecambe because we don't know anything about Morecambe or what they're going to do in the trophy. And if we want to start winning games, we've got to stop conceding goals and start scoring them. I think it's been the most obvious Stacey West podcast ever. I don't think there's any opinion on the, no one's going to go, no, actually, you were wrong. Well, which bit were we wrong about? Not Morecambe, and not, there we go.
Well, that's nice for a change.
Yeah, isn't it? It's the most obvious episode. I might just change it to the most obvious episode. Like Friends, where it used to be like, I don't know if you ever watched Friends, but the episodes were always called, like the one where, I don't know, Chandler's a bell end or whatever. So it would literally this will just be the one with all the obvious answers. So here's a not particularly obvious answer, and it goes back to something that Mr. Godson said. Anyone going to the FA Youth Cup game on Wednesday? So on Wednesday, Lincoln City are in the third round of the FA Youth Cup. We are hosting Wrexham. Great chance to see some of the younger players that perhaps therefore will not be appearing for the first team. Might be that they're on the bench. I mean, Zayn Okoro could probably have 20 minutes at the end of the game and still play the next day. But it's going to be a good opportunity to see what we're hoping is a talented bunch of youngsters smash Wrexham all over the park. So is anybody going, Chris?
Yes, we are. We
are going, aren't we? We've decided that it's a 7 o'clock kickoff, one of the times where something a little bit earlier works in our favour. And I don't know why this year I'm feeling more enthused about the academy than any year before. Even the one where we had the likes of Freddie and Sean Rowan and Jovon Makama, and I mean Billy Brooks, didn't come through. Billy Brooks teams, that was a good team. But there's something about this team, having seen Zayn Okoro, Denny Oliver on the bench, Weafer's putting goals away left, right, centre. I want to see more of this team. Not going because it's Wrexham, not going because the welcome to Wrexham cameras are there, because let's face it, they're not going to be on us, they're going to be pointing at the pitch. But I just think it'll be a good game of football, and it'll be something. It's actually an opportunity to see a team win at Sincilbank, which we haven't seen for a while, have we? So.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I'm really excited about this, and I think I probably echo your sentiments towards the academy as well. I've been a staunch defender of the academy for a long time, particularly of recent years. But I think we're starting to see some of the fruition of that now. We've got three players who are regular first teamers at League One level, at a top half League One side. I don't think you can ever underestimate that. Whether we have criticism of some of those players, I think they need to improve out. There's, Sean Rowan's 21, I think, and Freddie and Jovon are both 20 years old. They're regular fixtures in a League One side. That is brilliant. We've already seen glimpses of other players. We've seen Oisin Gallagher. We've had glimpses of MJ Kamara. We've seen, say, Okoro. There's a batch coming through now. I didn't know. How long has that been there, by the way? Just a little comment on the YouTube, by the way, for those listening. Gary's changed my name to Stato, and I don't know how long it's been there. It's just been pointed out.
I did it while you were talking stats earlier.
Makes sense.
It was amusing.
Okay, I've just noticed it. So yeah, and whereas now we've seen some names. We haven't seen a huge amount of on-field action, but we've seen some names been featured in first team squads and on the bench in whether it be league or cup competitions as well. There seems to be a little bit of a conveyor belt, which is the whole point of it. That's what you want from an academy. It takes a while to get to that point, but I feel like we're starting to get there now. So it's really nice to be involved. And also on a side note, the new Football Manager video game will be released soon. And as part of that, I obviously do all the data for Lincoln. You need to do all the data for the youth players as well as the first teamers. It'd be nice for me to get some first-hand experience of looking at them and being able to have a little bit more of knowledge of that. So I'm looking forward to it for two reasons, really. To maybe see a Lincoln City side win at Sincilbank, to see some exciting young players, hopefully, and also to get some in-depth knowledge of who's good at what.
Indeed. One thing I'm not good at, drinking. We know that because this is being broadcast on a Monday, not a Sunday. There's one obvious statement for you. And throughout this podcast, we've filled you with obvious statements. 0-0 draws with one shot on goal is bad. Morecambe in the virtually nobody's watching trophy is hard to predict. If you win games by scoring goals and not conceding them, and if we can do that, we'll win games. Obvious, but still. Somehow broadcast all over Facebook. 50 or 60 people have watched online. Hopefully around another 940, given our usual numbers, will listen back in. We have been really grateful to have your ears for an hour or two. I am probably going to go back to bed because these days hangovers don't just last 1 or 2 days. Other than that, it's been a pleasure entertaining you, and we will be back again later this week talking about the virtually nobody's watching trophy and looking ahead to a trip to the Dog Botherers. Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, up the imps.
Up the imps.